Most people know Mike Tyson as one of the most feared and famous boxers in history, a man whose power in the ring seemed almost unreal. But long before the championships, the spotlight, and the roar of stadium crowds, Tyson was simply a child trying to survive the harsh streets of Brownsville, New York. His early life was not filled with comfort or security, but with hunger, fear, and loneliness. He grew up surrounded by violence, neglect, and constant instability, learning quickly that the world could be unforgiving. As a boy, he was bullied, beaten down emotionally, and left searching desperately for a sense of belonging. The toughness people later admired in him was not born from confidence, but from necessity. Every day demanded resilience, not for glory, but because no one else was there to protect him. Beneath the anger that would later define his public persona was a wounded child, carrying pain that no child should ever have to endure. The mentor who became family. Everything in Tyson's life began to change when he met Cus D'Amato, the legendary boxing trainer who saw something deeper in him than rage or aggression. Cus recognized that Tyson's anger was really fear, and his violence was really vulnerability. He didn't just teach Tyson how to fight, he taught him how to believe in himself. For the first time, Tyson experienced discipline, guidance, and something close to unconditional care. Cus became more than a coach. He became the father figure Tyson had never truly known. Under Cus's mentorship, Tyson transformed from a troubled outcast into a focused prodigy. Every punch he threw was no longer just about survival, but about purpose. Cus gave him structure, hope, and a vision of greatness. But life can be cruel, and just as Tyson began to feel anchored, tragedy struck. Cus's death devastated him, leaving behind not only grief, but a deep emotional emptiness. Losing Cus meant losing the one person who truly understood him, and from that moment forward, Tyson faced the world carrying both fame and heartbreak. The rise of a champion with hidden pain. By the age of 20, Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history, shocking the world with his power and intensity. His victory over Trevor Berbick was seen as the arrival of something unstoppable. Fans were amazed, reporters celebrated him, and promoters quickly realized the financial empire they could build around him. To the public, Tyson looked invincible, like a force of nature. But behind the bright lights, his inner world was far more fragile. Fame did not heal the loneliness he carried, and money could not replace the emotional security Cus had provided. Tyson was suddenly surrounded by people claiming to support him, but many were motivated by personal gain rather than genuine care. Outside the ring, he was still a young man struggling to navigate life, carrying childhood trauma and grief while being watched constantly by the world. Personal turmoil. Under a public scrutiny, Tyson's marriage to actress Robin Givens became a media spectacle, presented as though it might bring stability to his chaotic life. But behind closed doors, the relationship was strained by emotional turbulence, misunderstanding, and unresolved pain. Tyson struggled to balance the demands of fame with the insecurities rooted in his past. When the marriage fell apart publicly, the world witnessed not the champion, but the vulnerable man beneath. Media narrative shifted quickly, turning him from admired hero into controversial figure. The pressure of constant judgment only intensified his internal struggles. Success in boxing could no longer shield him from the chaos unfolding in his personal life, and this period marked the beginning of a downward spiral where fame amplified every flaw instead of hiding it. A fall that changed everything. In 1992, Tyson faced a conviction that altered the course of his life forever. His prison sentence was seen by many as a shocking fall from grace, proof that even champions are not untouchable. For Tyson, prison was more than punishment. It was a confrontation with himself. Stripped of wealth, status, and the illusion of invincibility, he was forced to sit with the patterns and wounds that had shaped him since childhood. During this time, he reflected deeply, realizing that fame had never truly protected him from pain. Prison became a turning point, forcing him to reckon with the trauma and choices that had led him there, and planting the first seeds of transformation. Return to the ring and a moment of infamy. When Tyson returned to boxing in 1995, he was no longer the unstoppable phenomenon of his youth. He still had talent, but unresolved anger and emotional scars continued to guide his actions. The infamous fight against Evander Holyfield in 1997 became one of the most shocking moments in sports history. In a lapse of judgment, Tyson bit Holyfield's ear, an act that stunned audiences worldwide. To many, it was simply scandal, but beneath the headlines was a man whose internal struggles were spilling out publicly. That moment symbolized decades of unprocessed trauma, frustration, and pain. It reminded the world that even the strongest athletes are still human beings, carrying burdens invisible to spectators. Financial collapse and the weight of addiction. After boxing, Tyson faced challenges that were just as brutal as any opponent. He declared bankruptcy, losing the fortune he had earned. Mismanagement, reckless spending, and exploitation by those around him left him financially broken. At the same time, he struggled with addiction, seeking escape from grief, regret, and the pressure of his identity. Substances offered temporary relief, but deepened his pain. These years revealed how fragile life can become when emotional wounds remain untreated. Tyson was forced to confront vulnerabilities he had spent his entire life trying to hide behind strength and aggression. Unimaginable, loss, and deep grief. In 2009, Tyson endured one of the most devastating losses imaginable, the death of his 4-year-old daughter, Exodus, in a tragic accident. This grief eclipsed everything else in his life. No fame, money, or championship could soften the heartbreak of losing a child. Tyson withdrew, overwhelmed by sorrow and disbelief. This tragedy forced him into a level of vulnerability he could no longer avoid. The loss of Exodus became a painful catalyst for deeper self-reflection, reminding him that true strength is not about dominance, but about enduring heartbreak and continuing to live. Healing, growth, and reinvention. Following tragedy, Tyson began the slow and difficult process of rebuilding his life. Therapy, recovery, and personal reflection became central to his transformation. He worked to confront toxic patterns, remove harmful influences, and embrace honesty about his pain. Gradually, the world began to see a different side of Tyson, one marked by empathy, humor, and vulnerability. His one-man show, Undisputed Truth, allowed him to tell his story on his own terms, blending reflection with raw humanity. For the first time, audiences saw Tyson not just as a fighter, but as a complex man shaped by trauma, committed to growth and learning to heal. Aging, limitations, and redefining strength. As Tyson moved forward, he also faced the realities of aging and the physical toll of boxing. Injuries, chronic pain, and the decline of stamina challenged him in new ways. Yet Tyson approached these limitations with persistence. He continued training not to dominate, but to survive emotionally and physically. Boxing became less about aggression and more about discipline and meditation. Through this, Tyson embraced a new definition of strength, not power over others, but courage to adapt, accept vulnerability, and keep going despite life's inevitable changes. Legacy beyond the ring. Tyson's story highlights the tension between public perception and personal truth. The media often focused on scandal, controversy, and spectacle, but Tyson's deeper reality was one of pain, loss, and transformation. His openness about trauma, addiction, grief, and healing challenged simplistic narratives. Over time, his legacy became less about knockouts and more about survival and redemption. Tyson's life shows that growth is possible even after profound mistakes, and that healing is not a destination, but a lifelong journey. The man behind the myth. Mike Tyson's life transcends boxing. It is the story of a child shaped by hardship, a young man lifted by mentorship, a champion overwhelmed by fame, and a human being forced to confront grief, trauma, and accountability. Today, Tyson stands not only as a legend of sport, but as a survivor committed to understanding himself. His victories are no longer measured in belts, but in honesty, resilience, and the courage to rebuild. His journey reminds us that even the most powerful figures carry hidden struggles, and that redemption is found not in perfection, but in the willingness to keep growing. A continuing journey of redemption. At this stage of life, Tyson continues to live with intention, balancing public expectation with personal healing. His story teaches a profound lesson. Survival itself can be an achievement, and transformation is always possible. From the streets of Brownsville to global fame, through tragedy and renewal, Tyson embodies both fragility and strength. His legacy is not only one of triumph and controversy, but of endurance, reflection, and hope. A reminder that even the hardest past can be met with courage and humanity,